actually. Hello, beautiful people. It's Steph here, and I am back with my monthly live. I feel like there's all this stuff in my hair, which is annoying me. But yeah, no, as usual, I've got some questions in because I know some people can't make it, which is fine. So I'm going to run through the questions that I already have. But I wanted to start off with a little announcement. So the announcement is that I have decided that because the new application season has just opened, I am going to be doing a 4-part series to help all aspiring solicitors. So I'll drop the link for this series in the chat. Feel free to sign up if you want to come to that. It's going to be a webinar series that basically just covers the right mindset to kind of help you with applications, how to figure out your personal brand, how to actually pick the right firm for yourself, and then also finally, obviously, the like application and interview tips that you might need to be successful in this particular application cycle. So if that's something that's of interest to you, please do feel free to sign up. But without further ado, let's get straight into the questions that have already come in. So first question that we had was, where is it? Okay, yeah. So I'm hoping to study law, and I was wondering if you had any advice for incoming first year students in terms of getting ahead academically and career wise. Um, that's a difficult one because I think the thing with a law degree, and I think this is something that you pick up like as you are going through the degree. So that part of the journey is actually quite important for you to pick up and figure out for yourself. But you don't actually have to read everything. And it's actually, as far as I'm personally concerned, impossible to read everything. Like the level of reading you're expected to do as a law student is crazy, right? So I'm sure like by now you probably already have like your reading list and all that sort of stuff. So if you're going to university like this September or this October or whatever. Um, and you can start it and stuff like that, but you'll probably find that things probably don't make much sense until you actually start the course anyway. So I don't know how much benefit there is to you to actually doing all of that pre-reading. Um, and B, you're just not going to be able to get through everything. Like there's actually just a lot to read. So there's no point forcing yourself to do something that isn't practical. What I would say is maybe go through the reading list and like maybe pick like one or two things that you want to read that can just give you a general overview of what you're going to be doing in that particular term. And the reason why I say this is that 9 times out of 10, and again, this is something that you discover, you tend to find that your reading list will be like a page worth of different books and stuff that you need to read, but like the books are all containing the same information, right? So you don't actually need to read all 5 books saying the same thing. You can read one that makes sense to you. So I would say just go ahead and read like one maybe in terms of getting academically ahead. And then also maybe like download your timetable and start to figure out like a study timetable for yourself because you need to do a lot of independent study. And obviously, as time goes on, you might find that this study timetable will change for different reasons. Like maybe you join some societies, which means you can't study at the time you thought you could. Or maybe you just realize that, your whole life you thought you were an evening study person and actually it turns out you're a morning study person or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter. But have a plan of action for like, I'm going to block out 2 hours every day to sit in the library and study or whatever it is. So that you can kind of start as you mean to go on. Because I think one of the easiest things that can happen, especially as a law student, but just generally as a uni student, is that you fall behind on a couple of lectures or a couple of seminars, and then it just gets so hard to catch up because you're behind. So if you want to try and get ahead with that, then maybe like just have in place already your kind of study plan and how you want to study and stuff like that. And hopefully across your A levels or IB or GCSEs or whatever exams you've done to date, you would have started to figure out how you learn best and how best you study and all that sorts of things. So you can implement those things to your university kind of degree life as well. But yeah, that's what I would say in terms of getting ahead. Like, don't worry about doing all of the reading because you're probably not going to finish it and it's probably not that helpful. But do try to just get ahead generally in terms of like setting yourself up for success and stuff like that. To the second part of the question, so getting ahead in terms of your career, I would say first year is a really good time to explore different things. So some of the things that I did in first year was attend a lot of presentations that law firms were like doing on campus. Law firms tend to do this during like what they call the milk round season. So it tends to be around October to November-ish time every year. So for you, that's a really good time because you kind of just started uni. You probably don't have, I mean, you probably will have some assignments, but like there's not too many pressurizing things on your plate. So that's a good time for you to go to these things. And you'll often find that a lot of like third year students are going to these things because obviously they want a job and stuff. But you as a first year student, it's really just a good time for you to like go and explore different firms and find out what you like and stuff like that. find out about the different routes available. So there might be some first year schemes that these firms have. There might be like things you can kind of get ready for second year as well. So I just think that's a really good thing to do in terms of getting ahead with your career. The other good thing that I would say you can do, which a lot of people don't do, but go and speak to your careers advisor at uni. They are paid and they are there to help you. So you can kind of say, oh, I'm interested in going into law. Not entirely sure whether it's, commercial law, family law, criminal law, whatever, but like this is what I'm interested in. What kind of things can you do to help me? Can you help me go through my CV? Can you help me write a cover letter? Like all that kind of stuff, because they can definitely help you do that. So I would say go and see your careers advisor as well. Yeah, those are probably the main two things that I'd say you should do. Like just try and attend as many events as possible to just get a feel for the different firms and then also speak to your careers advisor. So hopefully that helps. I see we've got a question in the chat. So let me go to that and then I'll go back to the previous questions I've had. So, hey Steph, thanks for all your videos. So helpful. Thank you very much. I was wondering if you're able to look over my draft cover letter. I like how you've written that. I'm getting ready to apply for the Spring VAC scheme. So unfortunately, I don't actually have the time to look at individual cover letters. What I can do, and what I did mention at the beginning, is that I am putting together this like 4-week webinar series over the course of September. And there's only 10 spaces for that series. So everyone who signs up for that series, I will be able to look over their cover letter. So if you would like to sign up for that series, the link is in the chat. If you are unable to sign up to that series for whatever reason, I will, and I have posted a lot of content around cover letters, and I've used my own cover letter as an example. And I've also done a video, I believe, on YouTube where I've kind of broken down my cover letter and stuff like that. So hopefully all of that should be helpful. And I can send all of those links for those, and I can repost all of those links on my Instagram story once I finish this as well, so that you have direct access to all of those to help you. But yeah, that's all just to say that I unfortunately don't have time at the moment to sit down, because like if I get given a cover letter or any application, I really do want to take the time to go through it properly. I don't just want to read it in 5 minutes and give you kind of general feedback. I would want to go through it in detail, and that takes about an hour and a half, and I just don't have that time to give at the moment. So hopefully that helps, but do let me know if there's anything else. Thank you. Back to the previous questions that we had. So we've answered what you should do if you're going into first year. What's the next question we have? Okay, so hey Steph, I've just graduated. I wasn't able to get a TC in the final round. I'm eyeing up the idea. Eyeing up? Yeah, I'm eyeing up the idea of whether I should go for paralegal roles, or if I should just take a gap year, or if I should just try and apply again this application season. What do you think I should do? I think that's a tough one because it's a tough one because everything is very circumstantial, everything is very personal, right? For me, for example, I had it in my head that I definitely wanted to get a TC before I graduated for reasons that were very personal to me. Like it wasn't even really to do with getting ahead in my career. It was more just so that like I had a kind of life plan that I needed to follow. And in order to do that, I needed to get a job before I graduated, right? So that was a very personal reason. I think you've already graduated, and the options you've presented kind of make it seem like you're in a comfortable quote unquote position, in the sense that you can afford to take a gap year, right? Because you wouldn't have said it if you couldn't afford to do it. And when I say afford to do it, I mean like, maybe you still live with your parents, or maybe, you don't necessarily have that many bills to pay or whatever. So like money is not as much of a pressing issue, if that makes sense. I think if that is a position that you are in, so you can afford to take that time out, then I would personally advise that that's probably the best position to be in. More so just because when you are doing applications and things like that, it obviously takes a lot of time. It can be very like mentally taxing, it can be quite mentally draining and all that sort of stuff. And I think the fewer distractions you have, the better. Having said that, I mean, I did apply for all of my applications whilst I was working and whilst I was studying. So it's not to say that you can't do applications whilst you're doing other things in life. Like you definitely can. I have. But I think if there is an easier way out, quote unquote, take it. Do you get what I mean? So I think if you can afford to be in a position where you don't need to work for money, or like just for pure boredom, like maybe you're just gonna be bored sitting at home not doing a job. So if you can afford to do that, then I would say do that. That would be my first option. If you can't do that option, then I would say, yeah, get like to be honest, I would say get a part-time job as opposed to a paralegal role. Might be controversial advice, but again, it goes back to the time that it takes for you to actually do applications and the time that you need to take to put into applications. And paralegal roles, or all legal roles, to be very honest with you, can be a lot. Like you'll be working a lot of hours, they can be quite hard. And I just don't know that you would always have the time to put back into your applications in the way that you would want to. Now the natural caveat to that is that you might be saying you want to do a paralegal role because you feel like you need legal work experience, right? And if that's your reason for wanting to do a paralegal role, then in that case, all for it. Go ahead and do the paralegal role because it makes sense. You're making money and you're also getting the experience that you need to then, apply for legal roles later, training contracts later, or whatever. So that makes sense. But I think if you're doing the paralegal role just because you think you have to, like you already have sufficient legal work experience, all that kind of stuff, you already have sufficient transferable skills from your other jobs, then you don't necessarily have to do a paralegal role unless you really, really want to. That's just my personal opinion there. And when I had a bit of time off, like FYI, so when I had time off between my LPC and when I started my training contract, there were a number of people in my cohort who took on paralegal roles. I didn't, because for me, I was just like, I'm going into a TC afterwards. I don't necessarily need to be doing a paralegal role. Yes, I do need money, but there are other ways for me to make money. And I just took a different part time job. Like I didn't do a job in the law. So I would say if you need a job just for the sake of like making money, but you have legal work experience, then just get a different job. There's no need to have to do a paralegal job like just for the sake of it, if that makes sense. So that's my 2 cents on that. In terms of the final option, I can't remember what you said. Let me actually open it again. Sorry. It was either a gap year, do a paralegal role, or oh yeah, trying to apply for the new cycle. Yeah, definitely do. Regardless of what you decide to do. So whether you decide to take a gap year, whether you decide to take on a paralegal role, whether you take on a different part-time job, whatever you decide to do, whether you decide you want to go and do a master's, like I don't know, there's so many options, right? But whatever you decide to do, I would say do still try and go again this application cycle, because I do think the thing with application cycles, and again, this might be a bit controversial, but I do think there's a bit of luck involved, in the sense that, hear me out, it's not luck in the sense that like they just pick you randomly from a hat and say you've got it, but it's luck in the sense that you never know who you're going up against in terms of the competition, right? You never know the pool of candidates. You never know how many people are going to apply in a particular year. You also kind of don't really know what businesses are doing in terms of like how many spaces they have to offer as well. I know, yes, generally, like you'll know that like a firm has 25 TC offers, or they have 50 TC offers or whatever, but like you don't know how many are going to be filled up by the spring vac schemers, the winter vac schemers, etc., etc. So in that kind of sense, there is a little bit of luck. So the more times you apply, the more chances you are giving yourself to like, I don't know, be successful. I don't know if that makes sense, but like that's how I think luck does come into it. Obviously, you still need to do a really, really good application. You need to research, you need to tailor it, you need to show your transferable skills, etc., etc. But I think the more times you apply and the more times you go into the application cycle, the better your chances are of being successful. That's just me personally. Having said that, obviously, I do know that the application cycle can be quite mentally draining, especially when you get the rejections and all that sorts of stuff. So I completely get that. And if it's a case of like you're just not in the right mental place to do applications because you feel like you've just been through a rejection, for example, and you just don't feel like you're ready to write like a really good application, that's fine. Then in that case, I would say, okay, fine, like take a little break. But if that's not the position that you're in, go forth, write those applications, prosper, do well. So yeah, that's my little 2 cents on that. But I hope that helps. Next question that we had was, oh, okay, cool. So I'm currently working in the medical field, but I want to switch and do law. Do you think that this is a good option for me? And do you think I should start by applying for paralegal roles? So I think this is quite similar to what I was saying just before in terms of the person who graduated without a TC. Only difference I would make here is, okay, first, a couple of things. First of all, it doesn't matter what field you are in, because I kind of feel like, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong when you watch this later, but I feel like you mentioned the like healthcare field or the medical field because you felt like you should either stay in that field, or like, I don't know. I just felt like there was a reason why you mentioned it, right? And I would just say that if your end goal or your dream is to be a lawyer, it doesn't really matter what field you're in now. Like anybody can transfer and become a lawyer. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing now. If you want to move and become a lawyer, that's fine. Should you start off with a paralegal role? I was actually thinking about this morning, funnily enough. Like whether I should do a series on the different ways that you can become a lawyer, because this is a side note to answering the question, and I'll come back to answering the question. But I remember when I was like 13, 14, and I was like, yeah, I really want to do law, and I was looking at how you get into it. I think someone just told me that, like, oh, you have to do humanities GCSEs, you have to do humanities A levels, even though I didn't do A levels. You have to do a law degree, and then like you get a training contract, right? So from that, I just kind of had this very narrow mindset as to how you get into law. And I think if I had known back then that there were different ways to get into it, I might still have ended up in the same position, to be honest. But it's just good to make informed decisions, right? So I think it kind of sounds like, because a lot of people say that the paralegal route is a way to get into the law, that's why you're kind of suggesting it. But like, I would just say to you that understand all of the different options that are available to you. So now you can do the SQE, for example. You could do an apprenticeship, for an example. And actually, that's a really key one, because a lot of people think you can only do apprenticeships like straight out of school. So, for example, you decide not to go to university, you do an apprenticeship, but you can actually do an apprenticeship at an older age as well. A lot of people don't know that. So you can do that. There's I think it's called Silex, Cilex. Like, there's that route as well that you can get into the law. So my point is, if you want to do a paralegal role because you find it interesting and the work there's interesting and all that sort of stuff, then fine, go ahead and do it. But I would just caution and say, if you're doing it just because you think that is the only route to becoming a lawyer, or that's the only way that you can do it, kind of thing, then I would say, actually, no, maybe do a bit more research, because there are a number of other ways that you can get into the law. Um, and it doesn't have to be through the paralegal route if that is not going to be of interest to you, and if that's not going to take you towards the end goal that you think would be beneficial for you. I hope that makes sense. Like, it's not to say that there's anything bad with being a paralegal or anything like that, because there completely isn't. But it's just to say that I don't think people should be pigeonholed into a particular route. Like, just check and see if there's a better way for you to get somewhere, because it might be that you learn better with apprenticeships, like I said, or you learn better with the silex qualification, like I said, or the SQE is better for you, like all that kind of stuff. So just have a think about all of that, and then figure out what makes the most sense, as opposed to thinking you have to do a paralegal role because that's what everybody does to become a lawyer, if that makes sense, because it's not. Hopefully that helps. Back to my questions. So the next question I had was, would you say that the work-life balance you have is good? For context, I worked part-time all through sixth form and my degree, and I was still able to kind of go out with friends, all that kind of stuff. So would you say the level of busyness is similar to that? Was it a level of business you were used to? I think I have said this before in a few different like instances, but the thing with the legal industry, when people talk about the hours, I think people actually mischaracterize the hours, because a lot of people will tell you that it's long working hours. And it's not to say that it's not long working hours, but in my personal experience across my 18 months in the legal industry so far, it's not so much that the working hours are long, but it's that they're unpredictable. So you don't always know when you're going to have a good day, when you're going to have a bad day. And for reference, by good day, I literally mean that, like, you could be finished working by like 2 p.m. Like, that's what I don't even mean a good day, like you log off at 6. I mean, like, there could be nothing for you to do by 2 p.m. And then there could obviously be a bad day where, like, there are things for you to do at 2 a.m. Do you get what I mean? So the issue is that you don't always know. And this is kind of department specific, to be fair, because there are some departments where you can maybe gauge this a little bit better, but you don't always know what kind of day it's going to be. So with that, that's when it can be difficult to kind of plan things like going out with your mates or whatever, because obviously you might have to book something, and you don't want to book something if you don't know if you can definitely get to it, like all that sorts of stuff. Now, that's all like a general answer. For me personally, me as a personal person, I would say my work-life balance has actually been okay. Um, and I say that because, I still, for example, go on holidays, right? Like, I've been to Portugal with my friend. I went to St. Lucia by myself. I've been back to Ghana, I think twice, during my training contract. And bear in mind, I've only been here for 18 months, right? I've been on like 4 holidays that I've just listed. Outside of that, like, I've been to the theatre a number of times. Like, I went to see Mary Poppins, I went to see Hamilton, I went to see Frozen. Um, what else have I gone to do? I've generally just like gone out with my mates. Like, I go for drinks. I'm not really a clubber, so I don't go clubbing, but that's more of a personal thing. It's not because there's no time to go clubbing. I've been out for dinners. I've been to like spa trips. Like, my point is, I've still had the social life that I want to have, and I've still been able to meet up with my friends. Now, I think there are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, boundaries. Um, One thing that I've come to realize, and this is not just in the legal industry, in all fairness, this is in every single job I've had. But if you say you can do something, then people will give it to you to do. And it then becomes up to you to use your discretion and, quite frankly, use your common sense to work out when you're going to say you have the capacity to do something and when you're going to put your foot down and actually be like, do you know what? This is actually my time. I don't have the capacity to do it. What do I mean by that? Obviously, your working hours are your working hours, right? So, like, let's say 9 to 6 as an example are your working hours. So, in that time, you are expected to be working. Outside of that time, yes, every now and again, you might have to help because at the end of the day, we're all a team, right? Someone might be on holiday, someone might be sick, someone might be bereaved. You might have to pick up the extra workload here and there because you are helping out with something else. That makes sense. However, and I did actually say this, I remember the other day to someone else, it's not actually normal if your working hours are 9 to 6. It's not normal for you to always be finishing work at 3 a.m. every day. Like, that's not normal. Yes, you might finish at 3 a.m. once or twice. I don't know. I don't even know how regularly it would be, to be honest, because it just depends. But like, it would be a couple of times, right? Because like I said, things could happen, things could come up. There could be like an emergency or whatever. Like, life happens sometimes. That makes sense. But it's not something you should be doing every day because now your working hours are 9 to 3 a.m. and that's not sustainable. Do you get what I mean? So I think when you see that things like that start happening, that's when you need to put your boundaries in place and like, just you need to assess whether like an email or a message is actually urgent or not and whether you are going to reply. There are some emails that come through at like 8, 9 p.m. In all fairness, it's usually because like they're from different teams in different jurisdictions. Let's say you're working with America, for example, 8, 9 p.m. our time is like 2 p.m. their time. So it makes sense that the emails come through at that time. But these emails come through and like, because of the seniority of people, they often forget to tell you that this is not urgent, we don't need you to do it right now. In their mind, when they've sent it, they know they need it like tomorrow, for example, or even in the next 2 days. They don't even need it immediately, but they haven't told you that. So you, as a junior member of the team, are kind of sitting there panicking, thinking, oh gosh, now I need to stay up and do this, but actually you don't. And you'll stay up, you'll send it to them. Obviously, the person will say thank you, but they won't tell you that they didn't actually need it immediately. So I think there are a couple of things there that you can do. When someone sends you something late, if you do think it is urgent, just ask and double check. Just say, is this something that you need now? Like, are we sending it back out now? Is this something for tomorrow? Like all that sorts of stuff. Because people will tell you if you ask. If you don't think it's urgent, then I would just say you don't need to reply until your next working day starts, i.e., at like 9 a.m. or whatever the following day. And that's personally how I've approached it. And when you do that, you'll realize that you are not really working until the AMs all the time anymore, and therefore you have time to go out with your friends. The other thing that I would say, so that's the first thing, boundaries. The other thing I would say is really, really key is communication. Because I think I found, and this is especially with the like pandemic way of working, the hybrid working thing, whatever, when you are working from home, there's less visibility essentially. Because if you think about it, when you go into the office, you know, you used to getting at 9, you used to leave at 6. 9 times out of 10, when you leave at 6, nobody would disturb you. And you know that people were only disturbing you if there was actually an emergency because people have seen that you have gone home. So in their minds, they're like, okay, you've clocked off for the night, you're finished. So I'm only messaging you if there's genuinely something that you need to do tonight. The issue now is that because we've been working from home, people don't always know when you've kind of clocked off, when you've kind of clocked on, all that kind of stuff. So unless you tell them, there is more kind of, oh, they might still be working. So let me just send it to them anyway. But again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying with boundaries. They might not be sending it to you because it's that urgent or because you need to do it then and there. They might just be sending it to you because that's when they get to it. So they're just sending it to you because that's when they've gotten it to it, if that makes sense. So again, you can just ask, is this something you need now? But in terms of what I was saying with communication, I mentioned that I go to the theater, right? Sometimes, right? So like, let's say I've got theater tickets for like 7:30 on a Wednesday. Bearing in mind, like my working day does technically finish at like 6 or 6. I don't even know when it finishes, but like, let's say it finishes at like 6 or 6:30, right? Um, and I'm supposed to be doing something in the evening, I can just tell the team like, "Oh, hey, I've got theater tickets to go and see this at 7:30, so I'll be offline from this time to this time. Like, if you need anything pressing, I can do it when I get back." Do you get what I mean? And like 9 times out of 10, that's fine. Or you can just say I'm offline, I'll get to it in the morning, like that sort of thing. Like, so long as you're communicating with people, there isn't actually an issue. So that's another thing that I found out there. Communication is a really, really big thing. And I don't know if it's just me, but like culturally, I'm not that used to always communicating what I'm doing. Um, I don't always feel comfortable being like, oh, I'm going to the gym or like I've got a dance session or whatever. But I've come to realize that that is what you need to do so that you can have your work life balance and you can just have a normal life. So all of that is just to say that I personally have had a pretty decent work life balance. Everything that I would say that I have wanted to do, I have been able to do. So that's been fine for me. I've never had to cancel on my friends for anything. Um, that doesn't mean other people haven't had to do that, by the way. But me personally, I've never had to cancel on my friends for anything yet. Yeah, so I hope that answers that question. That's it in terms of the questions I had beforehand. So I'm gonna wrap up. What's this? Okay, yeah, cool. I'm gonna wrap up. I will be back again next month at the end of the month as usual with my questions. If you have any questions, please do let me know. But I hope you find this helpful as usual. And I'll be back again soon with another video.